This is the Rugby Odds, where an unlikely pundit panel of a wordsmith, a WWE legend, a rugby star, and a supermodel scour the globe, seeking best bets and bad behavior. Are you not entertained? Yeah, okay, all right. Hey, we had a good week, so we deserve it, so thank you. Look in the sponsor opportunity green room. We have John Bradshaw Layfield, the returning WWE Hall of Famer / Rugby Advocate, King Gift Egbelu, the inventor of words, Mike Friday, the world-renowned sevens coach, Steve the Seven Czar Lewis of ElevateRugby.com, and Irish rugby legend George Hook, talking about what's on the Your Company Name Here slate. Let's get to it. Pretty good week last week, 49-35. Unfortunately, I got the wooden spoon because I had the worst week, so I know that you'll be very happy to hear that.
You suck!
No surprises.
Nope. Nothing new.
John, we're a team here, and the finger pointing, it's just like you've coached teams. Is this a healthy environment, or is he the cancer in the club?
It's an honest one. It's I mean, it's a very honest, direct one. I mean,
A2 Brute? What happened?
Culturally, we're very robust, I feel, as a group. We come together.
But somehow that doesn't make me feel any better. As
three of us are a really good team. That's why
maybe not today, Matt, but tomorrow you'll feel better because you'll know.
Thank you, Mike.
And by tomorrow, 2 Cents Rugby will finally answer the phone call from us.
It'll be a growing moment for me, a learning moment, right? Is that what you're saying? All right. So, Mike, let's start with you. How about an observation from the week?
You can't look past Newcastle against Sarries. A decent Sarries team sent up there as well. You know, Gonzalez back, the international boys are in there, Willis. Starting half-backs are their first choice, quality back three. You got to give credit up in the northeast. The Toon did a job, 17-12, phenomenal. It's not easy beating Saracens anyway. I think it's the first time they've beaten them in 15 years. It's nuts.
Is this an anomaly or is this a harbinger of something? I mean, is this something? I mean, there's pros on both sides of the ball. I get that. Anything can happen, but
I think you have to give credit to what Diamond's doing up there from a Newcastle perspective. He's just bringing in some hard-nosed grit, resilience, and it's paying off from it. Don't get me wrong. It's not a nice place to go in Newcastle, especially in winter time. Believe it or not, it is cold there. Oh. It is very cold up there, especially if it's a Friday evening or even on a Saturday afternoon. So they're making the most of it, and they're making themselves difficult to beat, right? And if you make yourself difficult to beat at home, that should be enough to maybe make sure that you're not in that relegation playoff.
John, how about you?
Sharks. Last year they were the biggest underperformer, probably in the history since Matt, you got a job as a host.
I didn't really get hired for this. I kind of created it, John, so it might not count.
There's a reason, because the other one would be fired. Look, Sharks underperformed. They don't have Smith last week. They underperformed all last year. Kept waiting for them to turn it around. Kept waiting for them to do something. They never did it. They got the same team this year. I think they're going to be pretty strong. They've still got this bones of a really good team. It looks like they're putting it together this year. And Zebre. You know, Zebre had played tough last year at the beginning of the season. They're a team going up. They're not good, but they're not awful anymore.
Gift, what did you observe this week?
Look, man, the era of South Africa is fully established. You know, we had a little bit of and if you boom, we had an iffy moment where we thought the green that was going to rise to the top was Ireland, and then they showed out exactly who they were during the Rugby World Cup. And I said last week, I said last week, Autumn Nation Series was the least challenging South Africa had, and they needed to have their actual challenge, and it was Sharks versus Stormers, and it was a game that we expected the South Africans to be able to do. After that, the Bulls went up into Connacht and said, we don't care about your cold, we don't care about your winter, and look, see what happened. South Africa's rise, Mecca is moving from New Zealand over to Durban or Cape Town or, wherever it is in South Africa. But the era of South Africa has fully established itself, half a decade so far.
Okay.
Let's go.
Right. There's a lot to unravel in there.
Yeah, he's correct.
First off, Connacht got a red card.
Oh, my God.
Excuses. Play with more discipline.
The sun's in my eyes. My shoes are untied. You got any more?
The moonlight was just off kilter by like 3 degrees.
The referees were against us. The crowd was against us.
All right, let's go to our URC Player of the Week. Johnny Matthews, the hooker from Glasgow, man of the match in an ugly match, and he credited his fellow 3 hookers for making 4 hookers on the roster for the match. Jack O'Donoghue of Munster, in a game that we probably thought Munster might lose, had an excellent game. He was also man of the match as the number 8, and arguably the guy with the best name in rugby, Geronimo Prisciantelli, the number 10 from Zebre, who held on to win a sloppy win against Ospreys and make John look good. John, who's your pick of the week for this?
You got a diss on freaking Zebre. They win a game and like, oh, they played sloppy. You're like the ultimate freaking troll.
Pick your player of the week, John, in the URC.
Johnny Matthews does nothing but score goals, but I got my Chickasaw native shirt on right now for my tag team partner, Mr. Gerald Briscoe, who is in the Native American Hall of Fame. My podcast partner, I'm going with Geronimo.
Okay, and we won't bring up that you said goals rather than tries. Gift, who's your choice?
So what?
Look, I will say that it is criminal that a South African player is on this. As if you can get all of World Rugby Player of the Years as South Africans, we should have it on here. Johnny Matthews out of Glasgow.
The high-scoring hooker. Mike.
I'm going to go with the hooker from Glasgow. I mean, having 4 hookers on a pitch must have been a lively night. Johnny Matthews it is.
We call that a Diddy party.
Diddy party. Well played, Gift. But just to be clear, all 4 hookers were not on the pitch at the same time.
Were they not?
Man of the match goes to Gift Egbelu for that. That is the man of the freaking year for that.
That was
the Diddy party comment, the greatest comment in the history of this show. This show sucks, but that comment was good. 2 Cents Rugby. You see how funny we are? Call us. We'll help your show.
So, Mike, who was your pick? You going with Johnny Matthews?
I'm going with Johnny Matthews, one of the 4 Glasgow hookers that made for a lively evening.
This is tough. I like Geronimo's performance, but I'm going to go with Johnny Matthews of Glasgow. He is our URC Player of the Week.
Break the time, Matt.
Now let's look at our Premiership Player of the Week, and the nominees are Guy Pepper of Bath, now healthy, crashed in for a try in the 7th minute and was relentless at the breakdown. Bristol's A.J. McGinty nailed all 6 conversions at the stoop on Joe Marler's last day. He helped ruin that day. And then Newcastle. How can you not pick somebody from Newcastle? Adam Radwan dove in for a great try in the right corner, and his team held on for a 17-12 win. John, who's your pick?
A.J. McGinty.
Gift.
Hey, man, go with the U.S. guy, A.J. McGinty. Show out and show up.
Ooh, Mike.
Newcastle, Adam Radwan.
We've been on the pitch about 17 seconds.
You're going to break the time, Matt.
I'm going to break the tie,
Matt. Break the 2-1 tie.
I'm
Out of 4
break
people,
the tie.
break the 2-1 tie.
and it's going to be A.J. McGinty is the Premiership Player of the Week.
Broken tie.
All right, let's take a break. We'll welcome in George and Steve and then bring you guys back.
They're going to bring more Buffalo mathematics into it. Let's go, Matt.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
And we're back, and once again, we have the pleasure of welcoming in Mr. George Hook and Mr. Stephen Lewis. Gentlemen, welcome. George, we'll start with you. Let's have you talk some sevens. Something's on your mind.
Obviously, I'm in the company of an absolute expert on this field. I have some experience. I won 4 sevens championships as a player in Ireland, and then I coached an Irish team in the original Dubai Sevens when it was played on sand. And then I saw this week that the Dubai Sevens is taking place, so I was obviously interested. And I looked at the results, and I thought the results were very significant. We're beaming this primarily to a US audience. And when 25 years ago, the US was talking about maybe being a world power. They really thought sevens would be it. If they hired half the US Olympic sprint team, they'd be home free. And also, women started playing rugby in America before any other country in the world. So they had another advantage. Now, first question to Steve is really, has USA, in terms of sevens, blown that advantage? Question 2 then is, looking at the results, where you had Spain, you had Fiji beating New Zealand, I think. You had Uruguay coming out with a big result. And again, the USA not anywhere. And again, is it because, and this is my theory, because you really have no lineouts, no scrums, no rucks, no balls in sevens, it's not as hard to find 7 players. So really, I think Steve's expertise is very important here.
Stephen.
Okay. Well, yeah, just to put the context, it was the first weekend of the new World Series in Dubai. Same old on the women's side as Australia beat New Zealand in the final. The US with a rebooted team finishing 5th. Everyone's rebooting the teams. This is the first game, first tournament post-Olympics. It's the start of the next 4-year cycle. So, in fact, there were 95 debutantes over the course of the weekend, which is staggering. 95 new players introduced to this international audience with no real drop in the drama. It was still entertaining stuff. It was great stuff. On the men's side, as George points out, the surprise packets were Spain, who beat New Zealand twice to get to the final, where they fell to a strong Fiji side, who have sort of reclaimed their place back at the top of the throne. The US men did not fare well, also rebooting, but so is everyone else. They went 0 for 5 and finished bottom last. So they are now, even early on in relegation, doggy doo-doo. Generally speaking, World Rugby is sort of deprioritizing sevens. And this is because, and it's a mistake, and it's because the established unions don't want to spend money on sevens. They're obsessed with 15s, and that's what makes money for them. England, Scotland, Isle of Wales. Everyone understands that, and it's perfectly acceptable to fight their corner. However, if we're going to talk about growing the game, as to George's point about you can find a couple of sprinters, a couple of playmakers, you can create a competitive team much faster with much less resources. So, for instance, that Uruguay team you mentioned, 3 years ago, I coached Jamaica. We beat Uruguay. Uruguay have got their act together, and they're now in the World Series 3 years later. Okay, that shows what can be done. Their last 15s test match, I think it was against Spain about a month ago, every single back in the Uruguay team played for their sevens team in the previous 2 years. So yes, you can develop players for 15s through sevens. And yes, it gives smaller nations a fighting chance to compete. You don't have the same moving parts. You don't have to be competitive scrum and line out. You can have athletes, good rugby players, and you can compete. And by competing and taking a scalp here and there, that's how you get interest in the game as a whole. So World Rugby is, going down from 8 series stops to 6 or 6 plus LA is a mistake. Deprioritizing sevens for the growth of the game is a mistake.
Well, if they don't deprioritize sevens, then they'd have to give Spain, if they're going to beat New Zealand, a vote at the table, right? I mean,
there's that as well. There you go. 93 teams without a vote, but we've already discussed this.
Crazy. All right.
But just as finally to Steve's point, you see, obviously I'm more familiar with Ireland than any other country in sevens. Our women have done remarkably well in sevens, and the transfer rate from our women to our 15s women has been reasonably high, as in maybe 3 out of 7. And we've seen a couple from the men's side go to the 15 side, most notably, probably the best fullback in the Six Nations, Keenan. So Steve's point, as always, is bang on. And like World Rugby has made a Horlicks of it. Horlicks is a drink that puts you to sleep. The World Rugby have made a Horlicks of it. They first of all come up and say, we're going to put sevens in the Olympics. Now, the minute you put it in the Olympics, you're giving it a vote of confidence. You're saying this is a big deal. And then no sooner do they do that than, as Steve points out, they pull the rug from under it. But what I worry, Steve's point about the US facing relegation in sevens. I mean, that's a big deal. And the powers that be, wherever they reside these days in USA Rugby, should be thinking about that.
Well, I'm sure World Rugby is thinking about it too, Stephen, final point.
Final point. So what was the great success story for the US in recent years? Bronze medal, right? France, Paris Olympics, Ilona Maher, Dancing with the Stars. What has USA Rugby done to capitalize on that? What have they done?
I don't think they're equipped to figure out how to capitalize on it.
It's a complete waste.
Speaking of waste, George, the RFU CEO, his contract, $1.1 million to lose $40 million. What do you think?
Well, one correction for your American audience, it's not $1.1 million, it's 1.1 million sterling, which equates to about 1.5 million bucks, right? And they lose 40 million. Therefore, you begin to see why England are so bad on the pitch, because if they're run in that, if the whole business, and rugby is now a business, it's professional. If the business is run that badly, and little surprise is bad on the pitch. But nobody can understand 40 million except, and I'm beating a drum and I apologize, a couple of countries got professionalism right. Ireland, New Zealand, essentially. Most of the other countries got it wrong. And Ireland has always been financially very good at running its business. So the Irish are making money and the English are throwing it down the toilet. How this guy can hold his job, I have no idea. But my worry is, where do they go next? The newspapers in this part of the world, huge coverage of this. This is a big deal, And interestingly, Sir Clive Woodward, coach when England won the World Cup, has been accused of talking BS with his proposals to solve it. And he is really, because they're now at a point, I think, where Sherlock Holmes couldn't solve it. This is a big deal, I think.
Stephen, did you want to weigh in on this?
Sure. Scottish Rugby Union posted a loss. I think the Irish Rugby Union actually posted a loss this year, but they have been historically much better. So you've got Rugby Australia. So this windfall, when we had this equity fund money coming in with CVC and Silver Lake, this has now been essentially used, and we see nothing for it. This is why they have pressure to do this Nations Cup in Qatar, because they're trying to justify the expenditure, and they have to keep it within the boys' club. And this is why the game is becoming bifurcated. You have the tier one nations creating competitions. No one gets promoted or relegated for 3 years. So Georgia can't move up. No one can come up. So the thing gets ossified, gets stuck in place for 4 years. And that suits who? The tier one nations. Again, if you're one of them, I get it. But it doesn't grow the game, and it just exposes the ills that we have in terms of governance. We're not being the best custodians of the sport. We're being the best custodians of our particular union.
Well said. And guys, we could time just flies by with listening to you two. And I apologize, but we are running out of time. But before we let you go, we want you to give us your picks in the Champions Cup in our George versus Steve. George, who's your pick?
Well, Bristol are at home to Leinster at minus 10.5. Now, I'm trying to salvage some respect in the rugby community over here after my disaster last week about Leinster in Ulster and having lack of faith. Bristol are not the Bristol of old, but I think they'll beat 10.5.
You know, AJ McGinty has arguably been the best fly half in the Premiership this season, George, and he's at the helm for Bristol.
Yes, his dad was the headmaster of Blackrock College and a great friend of mine.
And yet you pick against him.
Yeah, it's Bristol for crying out loud. They're English and Protestant and Cromwellian and all the kind of things that I don't like.
Stephen, who's your pick?
Well, who do you think? The Glasgow Warriors. So having their Seaside coming off a comfortable win over the Scarlets, not comfortable, very edgy win. But they will replenish. Glasgow have got a point to prove in Europe. It's the one area they haven't performed well in. They have Sale coming up, the Sale Sharks from down south, Cromwellian, all the rest of that stuff George just said. And I think the spread's 8.5. I think Glasgow will sweep aside the Lancastrian challenge comfortably.
Glasgow actually win that match, or did Scarlets just continually hand them that match, including a missed penalty goal and a missed drop goal in the final minutes?
You have more points at the end of the game than the other. That means you win.
All right. And we won today. Again, rugby won today from you two being on the show once again. Thank you, Mr. George Hook, and thank you, Mr. Stephen Lewis. We'll be right back. From New York City comes America's longest-running and most popular rugby show. The biggest names in Major League Rugby, MLR highlights, and big match previews. Rugby Wrap-Up presents MLR Weekly, made in New York City. Hey, U.S. fans, you can tune into every match live on Flow Rugby. How do we know that? Because we're on there all the time. And we are back, and it's time for our new recurring segment, Grown Ass Man! The nominees are Henko van Wyk of the Lions, the center forcing himself into elite rugby conversations, much the way he forced himself into the try zone versus Munster after steamrolling a would-be tackler and carrying 3 others in for the try. Our other choice wore number 18 for the Sharks versus the Stormers, Trevor Nyankane, who absolutely destroyed the Stormers fly half SFM by imitating a brick wall. Unfortunately, Trevor was pinged on the tackle for tackle height, so that precludes him from winning. That means Henko van Wyk
Is this week's Grown Ass Man!
Well, congratulations to Henko.
That is the dumbest comment ever since the last dumbest comment you made ever. You've got 2 people in this contest, and you say one is disqualified because they got a penalty because you got some type of snowflake rule that somehow goes against having a grown-ass man. So you say, oh, who won it? Well, one has just been disqualified by you, and there were only 2.
You know, that's a valid point. That's a valid point. We'll have management review it and address it. In the meantime, we have some picks to make. Let's go to the Champions Cup. Mike, who do you like in the Champions Cup?
Right. They were bad last week, and they went up to the Toon, and they lost on the road to Newcastle. But I can't see Saracens doing that again. I can't see it, and I think the Bulls are decent, but they're coming to Saracens at home, and I think Saracens will have a big message to send. So I think Saracens to cover the Bulls in what will be an epic game.
Yeah,
this is where we gotta match this out, because I told you it's the era of South Africa. Mecca has moved from New Zealand to Cape Town or Durban, depending on where you want to go to, because the Bulls are coming in hot. All right, they already beat Connacht, so it's not a cold thing anymore. They know the big stage, so it's not Twickenham Stadium. I think Bulls are going to be able to show against Saracens, because I also think England's got the yips against South Africa, and I think it continues on even at the professional level. Champions Cup, Bulls not only cover, but will win, because that will still keep them covering either way. So, yeah.
John.
Whether it's the era of South Africa, which I think it is or not, it damn sure ain't the era of Ireland anymore, especially in championship games. Because what they do in championship games, look at me. So I'm going against Ireland and Munster. 12.5 points against Stade Francais. Munster blows. Give me Stade Francais.
Racing 92. There's where the easy money is. They're going to beat up on a Joe Marler-less Harlequin side. So Racing 92. Let's take a quick break. Come back with our picks
to Marcus. What a disrespect. Wow. Just act like he's not there running things on his back. Shame.
Bam.
Marcus Smith.
Yes. I just call him by his name. We're familiar.
This
He
is
doesn't
big
know it,
time
but we're
rugby. This is
familiar.
big time. He's going against Faz. Are you missing that point? He's going against Owen Farrell.
You're the
Come on.
troll that was talking about Owen Farrell for years. Oh, Owen Farrell this. You're like the guy on Twitter going
The only
after
thing
Owen
I
Farrell
said-
for years.
the
And now all of a
only-
sudden you're up his butt like you are Stephen Lewis.
Oh, listen to you, Mr. George Ford. The only thing, and Eddie George, the only things I've ever said about Faz.
Eddie George, the running back from
Eddie
Tennessee.
George.
Eddie George,
Eddie
yes.
George is a retired running back from Tennessee Titans.
Is
What
the
hell
uncle-
are you talking about?
He's the uncle of Jamie George of England, which a lot of people don't know. But that's the beauty of this show. We give out knowledge. But
Eddie George, the running back for the Tennessee Titans, is the uncle of Jamie George.
yes, Google it. Google it. Let's take a break, and we'll come back with our picks of the week after this.
You need your cleats? You need them tomorrow? If you order today by 3 p.m. New York time or noon LA time, they can have them to you tomorrow. Young, old, male, female, if you're playing on turf, if you're playing on grass, if you're playing in the rain, you're playing in the heat, they've got you covered. RugbyNow.com. Go there now.
And we're back, and before we go, it's John's favorite time of the show, picks of the week. Who do you like, Johnny?
I like two South African teams. I'm going with dominance from down under. I got the Sharks and the Stormers. The boat race, them boys coming down the Southern Hemisphere.
Gift.
Look, this is a competition that I understand that the French actually give a damn about, which is a first because they don't even care about top 14. So La Rochelle's been in the finals, the semifinals the last couple years. I think that they're going to be coming in hot. I don't think La Rochelle's that good this year, but they're going to keep it close within the spread of 5.5 points. Lose, but keep it close within 5.5 points to Bath.
Hey, King, quick question. Who did La Rochelle beat 2 of the last 3 years in the champion game?
I think there's only one team that could only choke against a person against a French team on the road. Leinster.
But at least last year they choked to a different French team, Toulouse.
Okay, all right. Let's
So 3 years in a row.
Let's move it along. There's 3 dead horses that you've beaten to death in the last 3 weeks. Let's go to Mike Friday. Mike, who's your pick of the week, Mike?
I'm going for that Bristol-Leinster game, funny enough. And I think Bristol are running hot. So I think 10.5 to Leinster, I don't see it. And I think all the Irish boys will be back, but I think Bristol could actually, they definitely cover the spread, but they might actually win it.
I'm going to go the flip side on that, and I'm going to take Leinster minus the 10.5
You bet them
on
in the
the
last 3
road,
championship games.
and I think they're going to shut John's face up for at least a week.
Until the championship.
We could do this all day, can't we? Yeah. But unfortunately, we're out of time. So I want to thank John Bradshaw Layfield, the WWE Hall of Famer turned rugby advocate turned judge, King Gift Egbelu, the inventor of words, Mike Friday, the world-renowned sevens coach, Steve Lewis of Elevate-Rugby.com, and Irish rugby legend George Hook. And thank you for tuning in. Please check out our other shows. Follow us on social media. Sign up for our weekly newsletter. It won't kill you. And please join our American Red Cross Blood Donor Team.
Call us 2 Cents Rugby.